Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Astrology Today with Jeff Harman. I'm Ella, Jeff's assistant. As always, of course, it's great to see you. Thank you so much for joining us. Jeff's got a lot to go into. We've got a new moon coming up on Saturday, the 17th. And on the same day, Saturn is going retrograde. Big, powerful energies. Then this coming Wednesday, we're moving into the summer solstice. More powerful energies. Lots going on in the world as usual as well. So take it away, Jeff.
All right. Thank you for that. Yeah, we definitely have a new moon happening Saturday, Pacific time, 9:30 a.m. And of course, Eastern Daylight Time is 2:38 p.m. Now, new moons happen every month, but always look to where is it happening in your birth chart and what is it aspecting, what houses it's in. And again, if you don't have astrology programs, a lot of people jump on the internet, or if you're getting a reading, you can look at that. But new moons have always traditionally been a time of planting, a time of meditation or new goals being set. You can actually feel the energy really kind of being sedate. And then all of a sudden when it hits the new moon, it's kind of somber. And then after that, you really start to see growth. And of course, the first quarter is always change. The full moon is always growth and a peaking of the fruition of the seeds planted. And science has always proven that too, that fluids literally tend to be down. Like in medical astrology, we'd always do purgements, like expelling things like parasites or purgative type medicines in the ancient worlds were done when the waning moon was going to a conjunction of the sun. So it's really interesting stuff. Paying attention to the power of the moon. What makes this new moon really powerful is Saturn is stationing in the sky, and it's also retrograding backwards an hour after the new moon. Now you might say, okay, great, so what? This has probably happened sometime before in history. But what's important about this is what it's doing in the Vedic astrology and what it's doing to the United States. See, when planets go retrograde, like Saturn, they have a really powerful impact. You tend to find you go inside or you internalize things. Saturn rules structures. It's a great time to redirect the course of actions you may be on, or examine them, or rethink them, or start to go back to the drawing board and say, is this the best approaches I can take to things? So that's one positive way to use retrograde planets. And it's going to affect everybody differently, depending on the house that it's in and also what aspects it's making. So that the aspects that it's making in your chart are really important. For instance, I have this year Saturn trining my Mars, but it retrograde stops and comes back and does it twice again. See, Saturn will actually go direct here this fall in November. So this is Saturn's retrograde about 38% of the year, and that's every year. Saturn always goes retrograde. So does Jupiter. So does Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto. They all go retrograde once a year, and then they go direct again. And each of these planets has a really powerful effect on life, and especially in your birth chart if you examine what they're doing. So it's really interesting stuff to note. And like a big deal here is the United States. See, Saturn will go retrograde now, and then it's going to go back and station right over the United States moon, which is much more powerful. Think of a siren outside of your window. And if it slowed down instead of just rushing by, it'd be pretty intense. That's the effect of a planet when it stations over the top of an aspect on an individual or on a country. And it's doing that on the United States this fall. And that's due to the retrogradation and direct effect of Saturn. Saturn rules karma. And this is also an interesting new moon because the new moon is happening in an air trine in Vedic astrology to Saturn as it retrogrades. Moreover, it's aspecting Ketu in the air trine. So you might say, okay, great. What does it mean? Because that's what I would say. This is a time of a lot of stuff coming unhinged. And clearly we see that. I don't know if anybody caught, but on Twitter, the accountant for Burisma magically ended up dead. How about that? With the Bidens and all. So it's very interesting. A lot of stuff is going to come unraveled, I think, this fall, and particularly this summer. In the summer solstice as well, is another peak point that, again, excites the United States birth chart on the air trines. So this all is about information, cyber warfare, things coming released on, again, more news and knowledge. Not that that ever stops, but I would expect a lot of stuff to be coming out. I don't think this thing on Biden is going to go away. And they're finding clearly these recordings exist. And I think no matter how the government media, also known as our regular media, is going to be able to spin this, because and this might be part of what we're seeing with the United States having such intense aspects going on this fall into the election year. We might actually be seeing that some very traumatic events might be triggered. I just got word too that I think it was Green on the House committee was saying that literally the Chinese, our military is coming in here, that their Chinese military personnel are also crossing the border. And we had mentioned that a while back on a podcast, that there really does seem to be coordination with the UN and also the Biden administration, bringing various different people in through South America and across the southern border. So we got some very questionable stuff going on right now. And again, this all dovetails back into the big picture, the Pluto return on the United States. We're either going to be destroyed or we're going to be transformed and be the phoenix rising out of the ashes. And of course, everybody's heard about the Trump indictment, right? And everybody's squawking about that on every channel. And, I looked at that and I got to say, this is really interesting. This all happened right when Trump had Mars transiting his 12th house in his birth chart, which is a big deal. That knocks your energy down. I always tell everybody, watch where Mars is in your birth chart, because that's your energy. And of course, he got punched with that right when Mars was in his 12th house. Now, that'll cross his ascendant right at the end of the month. I looked at an interrogation with this, and I think they're going to probably either convict him on one of those charges, and I think it's going to end up in the Supreme Court. That's what the interrogation shows. It's going to be a very abrasive, very irritating situation, which will probably resolve in the end. I don't think he's going to be sitting in a prison with, leg irons. I'm just not seeing that based on the chart. He actually looks like, in the end, after a lot of turmoil here, he gets out of this. So.
Yeah. What were you saying? We were talking about Uranus in his chart earlier.
Yes. What's interesting about Donald Trump, for the first time in his life, he has transiting Uranus, which, by the way, for anyone who doesn't know, it takes Uranus 84 to 87 years to go around a person's birth chart. So some of us may not live to see that. Others certainly will. So Uranus is the planet of unexpected change. I always call it the change grenade. It's like when somebody opens up the door and heaves a change grenade in your room and you are forced into change. Well, Donald Trump has that happening 3 times during the election year. And I can tell you that can range from anything from literal physical attack to something out of the blue happening that alters the course of his life forever. And these are powerful things. And I know I've experienced that in my lifetime. And I can tell you that if he makes it into when the primaries actually start, I believe the primaries start somewhere, I forget when it is, but I think they start right in February of 24, then they end somewhere around June. I forget the exact dates. But if he makes it into that, Trump has Jupiter crossing his midheaven right at the end of April of 2024. Now, people might say, well, what does that mean? Well, Jupiter crossing the midheaven can only happen to an individual once every 12 years. And I always tell people, look where Jupiter is in your chart, because if you look at the glyph of Jupiter, it's the crescent of the moon over the cross. It is clearly divine glory. It brings expansion, upliftment, opportunities, optimism, all that happy stuff. So, and it usually brings gain in the political career of life. So, or in your vocation or career. So Trump has that happening right around April 30th, beginning of May of next year. That's right in the center of the Republican primaries, which if he makes it till then, I can tell you he's got a good shot. And I can tell you, I've been saying this over and over again, with Uranus transiting his midheaven, they are going to try and stop this man one way or another. Why? Because he's actually going to probably try and do something, even though the corporate media, or I should say the government media, has completely polarized this country against each other. And I'm not sitting here promoting Trump or demoting Trump or Biden or anything else. I'm just looking at the astrology. When I look at the astrology in his birth chart, he has probably one of the most dynamic and crazy years coming up in 2024 that he's ever experienced in his life. I was one of the few astrologers who called him winning the 2016 election. And the reason I did is because the sun in Trump's birth chart crossed his ascendant precisely on the right when he won. I mean, almost to the day when he won, when you use what we call primary directions. They're very predictive. Transits and progressions in your birth chart really show the releasements and changes throughout your life. And boy, he's got them going on this next year, I can tell you that. So if he makes it into May, he's got a shot. He could actually win. We'll see what happens. And Biden, I looked at Biden's birth chart. Oh my God. Again, I have to say, and I don't want to sound conspiratorial, but sometimes I got to look at these news photos and I see the crooked ears and I see the look just doesn't look right. And very mysterious stuff going on with Biden. And his birth chart, I don't see this man. He's going to really have a rough time. Biden starts Sati Sate next year. And if he gets into the presidency, which I find that hard to believe, but then again, when you're pouring money into the top of the voting machine funnels and manipulating things, anything can happen, right? So, and that's another thing I've been hearing is that many of the states are going to paper ballots. It's going to be very hard to manipulate that.
Yeah, that's really good. It seems like the Republican states are signed up for that, right?
That's right. That's what I'm hearing, which is a really good. I love that because we really need a democracy. And, Tucker Carlson just put out a wonderful thing on this whole issue of why is Trump hated so much by not only the corporate media, but also many of the people in government sabotaging this. And he discussed how the military-industrial complex, which is really funded by the owners at the top of the funnel, pouring the money in. And Eisenhower mentioned this in the late 50s. He had put out a lot of information on this, talking about how dangerous it is for this inside government that's really running everything. And Trump made a good, attack against that during the 2016 elections, where he had said, we had no business in Iraq and we don't have business in certain foreign wars, and he was going to get us out of that. Well, that is the very machine that is running right now in Ukraine. It is a very, very profitable thing going to war. And, George Carlin might have been right when he said war is when old men in business suits send young men off to war. Of course, now it's women for their business interests. And that couldn't be more true. And, there are some just wars, but a lot of these wars are manufactured. Russia right now is threatening to cut an undersea cable, one of the internet cables. And if they do that, that could really disrupt our lives in many different ways. And they're threatening that because they're saying the United States was involved in blowing up the Nord Stream pipeline, which has caused a lot of suffering and a lot of fuel increases for people in Europe. I know I've got a lot of clients in Europe and I hear what they're paying. Some of their fuel bills are 4 to 6, 7 times the cost of what they were just 2 years ago. So, this is a pretty big thing what's going on. And again, our banker friends at the top of the pyramid love this stuff because they get to fund both sides. Here, you get a little bit and you get a little bit. And that's the way it is. And whoever the winner is, they just keep funding them. So we're
right.
Clearly in most interesting times. And again, the United States is on the brink of either complete disaster. Let's hope we are the phoenix rising out of the ashes.
Yeah, let's hope. Just to touch on Robert Kennedy for a second, it's so interesting what he's bringing to the table, because he's talking about it's time to let the people know what the truth is. Now, I don't know how far that's going to go, because I don't think the owners are going to stand for that. But he was speaking to the war in Ukraine and how it was planned out and all of that. Very interesting person to, follow and listen to what he has to say, because it is a new energy popping up, the kind of energy I feel like we do need to listen to. But, we did look at an interrogation on him a while ago, and it didn't look too great. So,
yeah, his messages are right on point. And again, he's telling the truth, and that's why he won't get in.
Right. That's Trump exactly right.
Yeah. And, again, when you look at the amount of money and influence that is poured behind these campaigns, and also the mind-bending techniques that are used, not only in the media, but also in polling and so on and so forth. There's an old saying, believe nothing what you hear and half what you see, and you might get somewhere close to truth. And I can tell you, he's got a great message. Many people have in the past. Trump is unique in that he's going against these guys, and he's actually still standing. But it's very interesting. You can see how Biden just literally was laughing at the reporters when he was asked about the recordings with Burisma. He just laughs it right off. I mean, he's very condescending. And this is very, very much in alignment with what we've seen in the past with the Clintons, Obamas, and on and on and on. And the Bushes, they just keep getting away. They are clearly in the fold. That's an old saying that everybody used to say, you're in the fold. And when you're in the fold, they will protect you. And this is clearly what's going on. And again, this dovetails back into the astrology I was talking about before. I really believe we are seeing a clash right now between the globalists and the nationalists. And this parallels very much back to George Washington and of course, the Revolutionary Army and all the founding fathers. They knew the Industrial Revolution was upon us when they were forming this country, a new era. We are in a new era now, too. And this is a new high-tech era that really began on the solstice of 2020. And that's all we're hearing about now is AI. It's new fuels, new technologies, new advanced things for civilization, all of which is good as long as we can keep something called the Constitution still in play and keep our country and democracy still in play. So this is what the astrology says, that we are really we got a front row seat, folks. We are going to see a lot of things happen. And I think this new moon, and all happening on Saturn retrograde, all happening very close to the solstice, is a trigger point. And again, I go back to the spring equinox of this year. See, the ancients always used the spring equinox as the most important chart for the outlay of the energies of the year. And you cast a chart. If the eastern horizon was fixed, you use that chart for the entire year, which it was this year. In 2023, March spring equinox, it was a fixed sign on the ascendant, which in plain English means we use that thing for the whole year. Well, that was moon squaring Mars. And there we go. Do we need to say more just on that aspect alone, let alone the others? This is a year where I think as this year bears on, a lot of things are going to come unraveled. And as they do, the powers that be are not going to let it happen. They're going to cause all kinds of chaos to disrupt anything that stops the status quo. And we're going to see where it goes because this is going to be hopefully divine intervention will keep it from getting too insane. Again, China's rattling more sabers over there with Taiwan. They've actually been practicing evacuation techniques, and I think even evacuating certain people over there. So a lot of stuff is going on behind the scenes. UFO activity has been off the charts. By the way, someone had mentioned in our comments that there was no video, and they actually do have video of one of the beings.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Oh, wow. You didn't tell me that.
Yeah, I just found it out. So
Because that would be the first thing someone would do.
Oh,
I would think.
iPhones, there's an iPhone every square inch on this planet right now.
Yeah.
You know,
So
joy.
seems like it's all coming to a head. It's all coming to a head. Yeah. Thanks so much, Jeff. Thanks for this. Thank you, everyone, for watching. We appreciate you so much. Have a great week. Enjoy the new moon. Check out where it is in your chart. Enjoy the summer solstice and stay positive. We'll see you next Friday.